So I've had some messages lately that have kind of been nudging me to not be afraid to go into the shadow, um, and spend some time with those stories. And I mentioned in at least a couple videos that I had this moment the other day where, um, I got on Facebook and encountered the my twin flames energy, his 3D energy, if you will, and had this moment of feeling sick to my stomach because, well, just at the time I didn't know why, but since then I figured out that part of that is because I know that where I am is not completely where I'm meant to be. Like I'm on the path going there, but there's still some stuff I gotta work through yet. Um, because there's been a couple intentions that I have set with that connection. Um, the big one being that whatever work would need to be done to keep us from having to go the path that so many others do, where they get together and all is good, and then something happens and they have to go their separate ways for a while, and then they come back together and it's really intense and magnetic connection again, and then something else comes up to trigger issues, rather than the back and forth stuff. I feel like I've done enough. I've had enough of the difficulties in my lifetime that, as far as this connection goes, I set the intention that we do whatever work is necessary, where we wouldn't have to do the come together, split apart thing. So, of course, that brings up different ways that we have to go through the triggering process, which is always, yeah. And for me, the other day, that was that coming across something that he was in and then being like, ugh. The other intention that I set for it was that basically, like, he'll know immediately who I am and who I am specifically to him when we do meet. So obviously, for that to be able to happen, that requires that I know myself to that extent too, and like know who I am at the core levels of who I am, which goes back to that navigating through the shadow. And yeah, so this morning I went over and stayed with Gracie a little bit while my brother took his wife to work, and I got up early so I could take a shower, and as I was in the shower I was thinking about, I just go where the thoughts take me. Water always takes me to various places, and one of the things that came up was when I worked at a daycare for a while. Okay, so the time frame that I worked at the daycare was, I was with my ex. We just moved to Alabama, and I worked at that job for, I think it was like August to December, and I left the job. I got to work with the 1-year-olds, And my favorite part about it was you could enjoy the little children and then send them back to their parents for the rest of the stuff, for the rest of their daily things and all that exciting part of having children around. um, but I got to thinking about this one little girl that was really feisty, and she would have um, days where she would be like kind of deviant and out to bite everybody. And as this was a time frame where I was with my ex and not in a good headspace, not having done any of the healing work that I have been through at this point, you know, my approach back then, because I didn't know what else to do, and I can't tell you how many times I've regretted it, we're just like reverting to what had worked against me, which was that whole shame thing. And like I saw this little kid just crumble, and I immediately felt like shit, because it's just like, you know, little kids that they show very clearly when something hurts a lot. And you know, it changed, of course, the dynamic with our interactions, you know, and I could see that little feisty streak flare up in her. You know, after that day, I had this table that was fabulous. It had little seats in it, so they could all be contained for food and snacks, or just any timeout if somebody wasn't behaving or couldn't get along with the other kids. You know, so just stick them there with a toy or two and keep them sidetracked that way. That was the better option. That one day, it did not go that way. And this little kid, you know, she would go from feisty and deviant to all at once like desperate for my affection. It was like, oh fuck, what did I do? You know, and I have thought about that kid a lot and always feel bad about that whole thing. And the whole reason that was able to come up was because I wasn't in a good spot. I hadn't done any of the healing work that I have needed to do in my lifetime. What? Thank you. I know what we're barking at. Yeah. But that one always kind of made me feel bad. And then there was another one that, God, it was so much more than that even. When I was, I think, just out of undergrad, that or maybe back on a weekend or something, or weekday. Anyway, I was here and my cousins were over. I don't know if my mom was babysitting or what the deal was, but one cousin was throwing potatoes at the dogs, and he was like 7 or 8, which of course, if you've listened to any of my videos, you know that's my time frame for the big trauma. And I got frustrated, and the words that came out of my mouth was, "That's why they don't like you." And I just, it made me sick to my stomach when I heard that come out of my mouth. And of course, the aunt whose son that was directed to was there and came in the room, and she knew as much as I knew that that wasn't good. And I could just see this one thing that I said become that negative voice in his head that would follow him around for however many years. And we never have had the same connection that I've had with my other cousins. And I've always regretted that one too. But the deal with my cousin was, it's kind of in the process of taking on the junk that was getting handed to me with the family dynamics that I came out of. And as that went further and I was trying to basically destroy the dark in myself, those shadow aspects, the church is very very particular about making sure the darkness is as bad and to steer clear of it at all possible costs because that's where the devil is and blah blah blah. I think I had a bird just throw some grass on my head. I don't know. As long as it's not shitting on me, because this was on my shoulder. That or they're mowing behind the fence. I suppose that could be an issue, but usually it doesn't go up and over the shed. Anyway, where was I? So I was collecting like all these negative things from my family and not knowing how to process them or what to do with them. And so then it comes out in the ordeal with my cousin. And then as I continue to kind of try to kill this part of myself, because you're not supposed to have any darkness according to the church, it just got buried further. And as long as you're burying things and not dealing with them, that your own wounded inner child is still there crying out for help, and for love and affection. But until you are able to look at it and see it for what it is, it's only going to get darker and deeper and have more of the garbage stuff until it comes out and suddenly you're using the garbage that is garbage on others just because you can't force them into your little perfect plan for whatever. Yeah. And then as you watch things kind of fall apart on that end, then we're chasing squirrels. It's probably the squirrel that did it. Those things are assholes. Yeah. Gidget just took off after it. She's funny to watch when she starts tracking something. But yeah, so it took me being able to see where that stuff was coming from. It all goes back to that whole idea of hurt people. And, whatever is hiding in the hurt you deny or try to convince yourself doesn't exist, the more you end up lashing out at others from that same hurt, and wounding others because of your own wound. And it sucks when you find yourself in that position, because that's something I can't take either of those back, but at the same time, there's no sense in denying them or trying to lie about them, because it's something that happened, and I wasn't in a good spot when it did happen. But that is also, a big reason that I set that intention. I'm not sure what's going on. There's a squirrel doing God knows what up there, but it's making some weird noises. Oh, he's staring right at me. And I think it's starting to rain. Let me see if I can get this guy. Okay, so here's the tree. I think I might be in his spot. He doesn't like me here. Oh well. Luckily my dogs are around to protect me. They're just kind of hanging out, keeping an eye. He comes down lower though. They go after him, but anyway, that's exciting. I don't know what that noise is all about, but yeah. So I briefly got rained on, but not enough to go in, and I'm under a tree enough that I didn't really get a whole lot of it. This dude, he's seriously just staring at me. This weirdness. Of course, usually I'm not out here this early in the day. So this is when they are running back and forth doing God knows what. Now I'm pissing them off. And that's actually, my brother and I were, not talking about the squirrel or anything, but kind of talking about that. The idea of, okay, he said something about my parents kind of lashing out last night at him and his wife, and it was an ordeal. But he mentioned something about it, and I was like, or he said he commented to his wife that, did she notice that when he turned Fox News on that I just left the room? And she said, yeah. And I said, that's one of my boundaries. It's like, they know that I don't want anything to do with politics and religion, so when it comes on, I leave. I'm not telling them they can't do anything with it. I'm not telling them they can't watch it. I'm telling them I am not going to have any part of it, and as long as they choose that stuff, I choose to not be around them. And it was, almost immediately after I left, there was apparently some drama where my dad kind of made a snarky remark that pissed my sister-in-law off, and then they both left real quick. And then my mom's trying to chase down, figuring out what's going on, and then apparently something had happened the day before when there was all sorts of drama, and it's like, oy. So my brother and I were talking about it this morning. I said, that's one of those boundary things. I said, I am very set on protecting my own boundaries, and I will not yield to them walking all over them anymore, and that is very much an issue for them. And yeah. Squirrel gave up, he's moving on. Don't worry. Oh, they're on patrol. Anyway, of course, since that squirrel is up there and I am down here at the shed, the dogs are staying over by me because that's what they do. And So the little bits that he can get across the yard, he can't do now, because, yeah, because we're in their way, or in his way. But anyway, I told my brother, it's like, I very much recommend being mindful of boundaries and knowing what's yours and what's not. I said, I feel like energetically our parents have used us as a dumping ground for all of our lives, because we didn't know that we needed to have boundaries. You're around your family and you expect they're supposed to love and take care of you, and basically end up getting bulldozed over in various ways, because they can, or because they don't, they're acting from their wound, essentially. And, I don't know how many times I have heard my mom say over the past 20 years alone that she wouldn't, or she's not going to therapy. She doesn't need to talk to anybody about stuff. Like the one time she had to, it was after some kind of ordeal, and she was voluntold. We'll just go with that approach. So she had to, very briefly, and basically everything the therapist said, she was like, nope, I'm not doing that, because he suggested that she journal and spend some time writing down the stuff that was bothering her, and she actively said she would not do that. And she will have extensive spans of like insomnia, and I've told her before, it's like, if you write it down and get it out of your system, then you can have the space to rest. I said, but as long as you're just holding on to things and refusing to let them go, you're going to get more of that stuff to hold on to and not let go, for one thing. And not going to be happy about it. It's not going to do you any favors. All you're doing is exhausting yourself. Yeah. And, what do I know? But at the end of the day, I can sleep when I have no I frequently, if I cannot sleep, I will just write, whether it's actually journaling somehow or texting myself messages. I do that, whether it's something I've been dreaming about or just my mind takes off on something. I'll send myself messages, and then I can refer back to them later. And that way, when my phone is on sleep mode, which it usually isn't overnight, so it doesn't have the UV stuff or whatever, all the brightness is off. It's like the grayscale screen, and it doesn't wake me up on that end. So then once I get stuff out of my system, I can usually go back to sleep if I meant to. Sometimes I just get up and go into the other room and write and stuff. But usually if I want to go back to sleep, I can. But we were talking a little bit about that this morning, and he said something about a recent conversation he's had with our dad, and I told him, it's like, look, the biggest problem that either of our parents have with me right now is I have boundaries. I know what is mine now to deal with, and I'm working on dealing with those things, and I'm not taking on other people's junk just because they want to use us as a dumping ground. It's like, those days are done. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm realizing how much of an impact that's had in other deeper areas of my life, and choosing not to do that anymore. So apparently, I don't remember when he said it was, but he was talking with my dad, and I think I'm not entirely sure I'm not going to get like attacked by these squirrels at some point. It sounds like things are falling and it doesn't sound like rain. And I do know squirrels are assholes because they used to throw things at people walking under the trees in undergrad. I watched them do it many times. Anyway, I think it came up because our family, especially my dad, my grandma, one of my uncles, there's a few people that will say that Gracie needs to be in church and she'd be better if she was in church. It's like, some of us disagree with that very much. um, it's like, especially from the standpoint of it's the most judgy people in our family that are demanding she needs to be in church. It's like, what good has it done for you? I'm not seeing any proof that it's what she needs. So, they'll throw that kind of stuff out there. And me and my brother and my sister-in-law kind of like, we have big things against religion. And, we're kind of very much fans of not going because other people say you have to. This is how it has to be. So apparently, my dad made that kind of comment to my brother, and he threw back a, well, actually, kind of a thing. We live really close to the fire department. So yeah, my dad came back at him with something about basically you're just trying to be like Sarah now, or are you turning into Sarah or something. And I was like, I knew it. I was like, I knew it was just a matter of time before they started using me as the, I'm the enemy and weaponize me in some way, because they don't like the fact that I have boundaries and don't let them run over them anymore, or run over my boundaries. They I always knew it was a big deal for them. My mom, I think she settles now for the in, as far as like the only time I even watch anything on TV is when she's doing my hair. She's kind of bribed me with it that way a few times, just because she wants me to watch something with her, and I just really don't care to watch TV again, honestly. Other than when we're doing my hair, I'm not really, there's other stuff I'd rather be doing, and usually writing, or listening to music, and not the crappy stuff that is everywhere on the media. But I don't ever do news stuff. And the other day, Wednesdays is kind of a big day because my mom's youngest sister is off work. My mom's on disability, and her middle sister is working on that because she had, they both had ordeals. But the youngest one's the only one that has a regular job that she has to go to. So when when that one is off, they make a big thing about getting their donuts and going over to my grandparents' house, because you got to spend every damn day with them. It didn't used to be like that. But as they're getting older, they are getting needier, which, yeah, happens. I get that. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff that is coming up is because they've been rocking the codependent lifestyle all their lives, and now most of their friends have died off, so they have each other and they have their family, and the family is supposed to cater to everything that every concern they have. It's how it's how the line has perpetuated with not having boundaries and being a energetic dumping ground for the ones refusing to do the work, kind of a thing. And so they had donuts, and my mom sent me and my dad a text and was like, hey, we have donuts over here. It's like, yeah, all right, I can make an appearance, whatever. So my dad went over there first, and because I was still getting ready for the day, and I went over there, and when I walked in, of course they're trash talking them with politics, so anybody that's not on their side, of course, and they're making fun of them, previous presidents and whatnot. And it is raining on my head now. Oh well, as long as it's not, my phone should be okay. It's not too ridiculously hard. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the politic thing. So I go in there, and they're literally just making fun of people. And not conveniently for whatever it came from, but there was a trail of blood on the deck. And I was like, obviously got my attention. It's like, something's been bleeding out here. And it was a big long trail from like one side of it to the real close to the door. So they're having their conversation, and I appreciate the fact that if I was in there talking about anything, they'd run over the top of it immediately if they had something they wanted to share that was hateful about, anything political or whatever else, anybody that's not in their religion, kind of a thing. And so I walked in and was like, did you know there's blood on the porch or on the back porch? And it obviously changed the entire conversation. It just brought that to a screeching halt. And it's like, what? It's like, I don't know what it is. It's like, but there's a big trail of it. So my one aunt goes over to the window and she's like, oh, I guess there is. And then it at least distracted from that conversation briefly, because my original thought when I walked in and heard what they were talking about was, that if I had already been there, that would have been the time that I got up and walked out and went back home. And the one aunt that was first to acknowledge what I was talking about with the blood on the porch, we've had lots of conversations, and she goes to church regularly, but I feel like she is not the same about it as she used to be. And the big thing was, I think 2 or 3 years ago, she had a heart attack when they were on vacation. And when they looked into it, it was because of a birth defect. And they said it's the kind of birth defect that, young, otherwise healthy athletes playing football would keel over on the football field and die from it. So she's never been an athlete, so they didn't find it sooner. And then she had this heart attack when she was on vacation, and she said there were all these things that seemed to be slowing them down, and she felt like she shouldn't go, and then they went anyway. And plane got delayed, so they had to end up taking another, or getting put on another flight, and just all sorts of crazy stuff. So she's kind of, I guess, wide open on figuring things out on that end. And we'll have conversations, and she'll let me ramble about anything. And she listens, and she says I talk over her head and she doesn't understand most of what I'm talking about, but it's not a problem. And she said that she has no problem understanding why, if people want to keep talking about politics or religion or stuff, why I just leave. She said that it doesn't seem like it would be that hard for them to just not do it if they wanted me around. It's like, well, clearly they don't want me around enough to rationalize that point, so I'm just gonna leave. And then, they'll make up whatever stories they want about me being the bad guy, and I become the insult for my dad. Yeah. What a trip. And that animal apothecary deck that I talk about periodically, there's this one card that says Nourish the Shadow, and it talks about how you have to tend to the inner child wounds, and pay attention to the fact that they exist and what they are bringing up in your life otherwise. And I started off talking about like that deal with the daycare and that little girl, and it's like, that was in the same time frame that I realized, I was being treated like garbage by my ex. And I've said before that it got to a point where I realized that I would rather abort than to have a child with him, and particularly because I saw him and his son's mom basically weaponizing this kid to send him back and forth, and it was a mess. And I refused to get into that kind of situation with him. And then, after this deal with this little kid, and I reverted back to this loading on the shame. I mean, it wasn't like an extensive thing. It was just, it didn't take long, and she was just absolutely crushed. And then I was devastated because then I heard this little kid. And, when you're acting from the wound, you're not thinking about, how it's going to affect anybody else. You're just acting from the pain. And since that was what I knew, that was what I could immediately recall, it was just another reminder of like, this is why I did not want to have kids if I could not heal from my own junk, because I don't want to perpetuate those cycles that took me down a very, very dark path for my entire life. And I think my dad's coming out tomorrow or something, so or he's at least coming outside. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, as always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see you later.